Welcome to the Collector's Catacomb, episode number 14. We got a lean panel tonight, which is just fine, and Sean wasn't able to be with us tonight. He had to take care of some family matters, so hopefully he'll pop in later if he gets a chance. If not, then we'll miss him and we'll see him next week. So without further ado, I'm Erik Castle. I go by TR, Tinkersville Relics, Tinkersville Retail. I manage the Allied Militaria forum, and I run the sourcingforum.com. I'm a collector of Militaria, mostly the 38th Infantry Regiment, as well as a few other things that are out there and other collectibles and whatnot. I do like a little bit of glassware and stuff. So started hosting this show about collectors and the collections and the history behind it all. So that's what we're here doing every Thursday night at 9:30. If you're a collector and you want to come on the show and share your collection with us and the rest of YouTube, feel free to shoot me a message, leave a message after the video. However you want to get a hold of me, go right ahead and we'll get you scheduled to get on the show. So my other co-host for the evening is, we'll go ahead and introduce yourself, guys. We'll start with Drew, the California Picker.
What's up, Erik? I'm Drew, the California Picker. I have a YouTube channel called California Pickin', and my specialty is fine art, antiques, antiquities, vintage collectibles. And so glad to be on tonight. Hope you have some questions, and we'll be showing you some cool stuff and talking about some other cool stuff. So
Awesome, Drew. How's your weather out there in California?
oh my God, it's perfect. You know, I think tonight or today is the last day of winter, so not that we experienced any here in California. Dan and I are both in California.
Yeah.
I just think warm thoughts. I wear Hawaiian shirts. I
Yeah.
grilled shish kebabs tonight, and I actually got out and started tilling up the garden the other day. So warm thoughts create warm weather.
Yep.
Yeah, we had like 90-degree weather. I mean, it was last weekend was hot, man. It was really hot. So
Crazy.
it was great. I mean, I got a peach tree in my backyard that started blooming like the middle of February. So it's got all of the blossoms coming out on my peach
Yeah,
tree.
the dogwoods around us started blooming this week. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Dan. Let people know who you are from more old stuff,
Hi,
not
I'm
including
Dan.
yourself.
Hi, guys. I'm Dan. More Old Stuff is the name of my I guess, business that I do collecting a lot. That's what got me started in all my resale stuff was collecting. So I collect all kinds of military cameras. I do a lot of paper stuff, I like ephemera stuff. So I do movie posters and that kind of stuff. And I got some paper items tonight. This kind of has a unique little twist, being ephemera on the military side and on the aviation side. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So anyhow, I have a YouTube channel, and all of my finds, as I dig them out of my truck and bring them home, I record them. So if you want to click on my name in there, and you can look at some of my goodies that I got going on as I find them. So all right.
Great, Dan. Well, appreciate you fellas being here tonight, and I'm going to actually kick it off. I think for the first time since we started this show, I don't think I've ever actually kicked the show off. So I'm gonna steal the spotlight for a little bit. You know me, I'm real short. Unfortunately, I'm not eclectic enough to go into beautiful details about all my items. I wish I was. So my presentations tend to be kind of short. But what I wanted to discuss tonight is I do collect 38th Infantry Regiment. It was the regiment that I served 2 tours in Iraq with. So I do actively seek out items from that regiment. They served in World War I, they served in World War II, they served in Korea, Iraq, and they even did a tour in Afghanistan. I was already out of the unit when they did that. So they have a very extensive history in the military. They did not participate in the Vietnam War. They were actually a training unit during that time. So they were training infantrymen that went to Vietnam. But so one of the items I wanted to share tonight was a Purple Heart medal that I have to, let me pull my notes up here. Master Sergeant John D. Kington. And, this is what the Purple Heart medals look like. If anybody's not seen one before. So, and this is what's known as a slot brooch. You can see that the ribbon actually goes through a slot on the brooch right here. This is what's called a slot brooch. These came about. Let's see, it would have been, oh, don't quote me on it, about mid 30s. I'd have to look it up for sure. But you can see the back. I don't know if I'll get enough focus. Let's see. Is it focusing or no?
Not quite.
I probably don't have enough light in here.
Yeah. There you go. Tip it like that a little. There we go. Now you can see that. It says military merit.
Yeah, see, it says for military merit on the back, and it is officially engraved. This is not the darkened engraving, and it's got the front of the planchet has a background of purple, and this one is plastic. This has a plastic background behind George Washington. So that's the medal. They came in at that time what's commonly known as a coffin case, mostly because it kind of resembles a coffin. And this is a two-liner, Purple Heart, above and below each other, and it would have included a lapel button, which would have went in the slot on the lapel on the dress uniform, and a ribbon for above the breast pocket on the uniform. So that would have been a complete set.
Hey, Eric, you mentioned that the background of George Washington on there was plastic. Is there other kinds of backgrounds for those?
Yes, there are, and this one's plastic. There's enamel, and there's also painted backgrounds.
So it's painted metal?
Behind George Washington. Yeah, like a painted piece where it would have been painted purple.
So can you date them kind of that way? Is that how that?
I'd have to check. There was periods like this one being plastic. Tells me Korean War, no problem. Okay. You know, if this was an early war or early World War II, and it had a plastic background, that would probably lead me to believe that it was a fake. Wow. Simply because they did not have, when they started the Purple Hearts, they didn't have plastic backgrounds.
All right.
So an early war Purple Heart should not have a plastic background. But could you specifically date when it switched over? Not really.
Okay.
You know, you're more talking about decades than you are years.
Okay.
But the brooch definitely helps. Now, you do see crimp brooch and slot brooch in the Korean War era. You see them both. And you'll actually find, like I know of slot brooch silver stars. I believe I heard one being issued all the way up into Iraq. Somebody received one. And I know I seen them in supply systems still. Slot brooch silver stars that were produced in 43. Still in the supply system. So sometimes you do get some oddities, and that's where the provenance comes in as far as verifying it, because it breaks the normal mold. Do you know what I mean?
All right. Yeah. That's cool.
So, yeah, I mean, and I'll have to dig some stuff up, and I can get some more specifics on it, and we can talk about it further. I just don't have notes on it, and I hate to give out bad information, but it does happen sometimes when I'm pulling it from my head.
Is the purple star as a collectible medal? Is that considered one of the higher or more desirable medals to get? I've been to shows and I've seen them, and they seem to be the higher priced of the ones, and there are guys that do nothing but collect Purple Hearts.
Here's the this will be part of the history of the Purple Heart of why they're so collectible. And you know, let me talk about John Kington here, and then that will make sense a lot, Dan. After I talk about him, and then I explain why the Purple Heart specifically is become very collectible. You know, so where's my notes? Okay, so Sergeant First Class, or actually no, Master Sergeant John Kington. He was from New Mexico. and he was a light weapons assault infantryman in the 38th Infantry Regiment. He was captured November 27th, 1950, and he died while in captivity, either from wounds or injuries. Okay, so the battle was Battle Wawang. I probably said that wrong, but it was a battle that the 38th was involved in, and he actually was captured the first day of the battle. So it's very plausible he could have been captured 2 days after that. But that's when, the records that they had when they reorganized after the battle, they figured out who wasn't with them, and they figured out who they didn't have a body for. So they did, as far as killed in action. So his official date by the military was November 27th, 1950. And what it was is, let's see. Boy, this is kind of boring stuff. Most people won't appreciate a lot of this. But basically, all right, so after the destruction of the Korean People's Army by mid-1950, China entered the Korean War by sending the China's People Voluntary Army against the United Nations forces in Korea, who were then very close to the Chinese borders. So in a series of surprise attacks, Chinese forces managed to cripple the 8th Army's right flank by decimating the Republic of Korea, the ROK 2nd Corps, completely stalling the UN advances towards the Yalu River by November 4th, 1950. Despite the seriousness of this setback, the undeterred General Douglas MacArthur ordered the 8th Army to launch the Home by Christmas offensive on November 24th, 1950. As part of the offensive, the newly arrived Turkish Brigade was assigned as a reserve of the U.S. 4th Corps. No. I'm horrible about reading Roman numerals. And was placed directly behind the center of the 8th Army's advances. So, basically, that was leading up to this battle, right, where this soldier was captured. So, on the night of November 27th, at this time, the 2nd Infantry Division had joined the UN forces, the Turkish forces, part of the United Nations. So they had already been, constantly being fighting. So the exhausted Turkish brigade entered the village of Wang to the east of the Kanuri, and Brigadier General Taysin Yakazi of the Turkish brigade ordered a semicircular perimeter to be established towards the northeast. All right. So then on the night of the 27th, the advancing People's Republic Voluntary Army, under the command of, I can't read that name, ambushed and destroyed the Turkish brigade's reconnaissance platoon, alerting the entire brigade. So knowing the Chinese attacks were imminent, the advanced battalion of the brigade quickly took up defensive positions on the road leading into Wawang. They soon met with the Chinese army and concentrated their attacks in an effort to penetrate the defensive lines. Heavy fire from the Turks managed to drive back the Chinese advances, but the attacking Chinese regiment continued to spread towards the left flank of the defenders. By dusk on November 28th, now you have to think about this, they've now literally been constantly engaged in battle for almost 2 days. So much different from how battles are fought now, But so by dusk on November 28th, the entire advanced battalion was engulfed by the Chinese. Sword and bayonet fighting ensued, resulting in 400 Turkish casualties. Observing that Wawang was surrounded by hills occupied by the Chinese, the Turkish brigade was ordered to withdraw 5 kilometers westward to the village of Sinimri. And so that's basically, I don't want to go through the whole battle, but the battle continued on until the 29th of November. So in all of this, the 38th Infantry Regiment participated in a lot of this stuff with the Turks. And that is where he was captured. He was captured during this battle, and I haven't been able to get all his records yet, but they obviously recovered his body afterwards. But he was a POW, listed as a POW, and died while he was, you know, either the Chinese or the North Koreans had him in their control. So from that battle, there was 15 silver stars and bronze stars medals awarded to the Turkish brigade for their gallantry in action against the Chinese. That's a big number of foreigners to receive American medals during a battle. So it's a pretty wild battle. So getting back to Dan's question about the why it's collectible, this man gave his life for his country, right? That was the last battle that he was in, and this medal would have been presented to his family, to his next of kin. This would have been the last medal that he was issued. Would have been the Purple Heart, and he received this. You can receive this in two ways. Either, being killed in action, dying in captivity, dying as a result of war, or a terrorist act, or from wounds received. So you'll see two different versions, and that's why you'll see the ones that were issued for wounds not bringing as much or being as collectible as the ones that were issued for killed in action, missing in action, those kind of things. And that's what drives the collectability of the Purple Hearts, is because that is, anybody that's been in the service knows that medals, you get awards and things like that. You don't always get the medals, but a KIA or a missing in action Purple Heart is always issued to the next of kin. So that it's that one singular piece that represents that soldier's sacrifice. Because that is it. That is the last medal he received for his duty to his country. Does that make sense now, Dan?
Oh yeah. There was another question from Maureen. She asked, so basically, I mean, why do they call it a Purple Heart? And obviously it's purple and it looks like a heart. But is there any history to that shape and the color and that kind of thing?
Yeah, okay. Let's we can get into a little bit of the Purple Heart history. It actually it dates back to George Washington. That's why he's on there. That medal itself doesn't, but what was called the Badge of Military Merit. And let me see if I can get a good picture of one. Which, if you ever come across a real one, give me a call. I'll give you good money for it. But you won't. I forget if there are, but there's only a couple known to exist. That are. See if I can find a good picture of one.
Let's see. Other question, maybe while you're looking, is it marked? Is the Purple Heart wheeling and dealing with Wheelie 5? Asked the question: is there a way to track whose Purple Heart it belonged to, and like if you find one in a show somewhere, is there any way? Are they marked with the person's name? Do they have, is there something in the box? Is there something? Is there, because I was wondering that too. I go to a lot of estate sales and stuff, and I've seen them there, and I just wondered, is there a way to know who received it?
Yeah, we could talk about that. Let me. All right. So can you see that there?
Okay.
That's the Badge of Military Merit. That is one of the ones that's an original. That this is a whole little history written on that one badge, but I really don't want to. It's extensive, but basically, the Badge of Military Merit was considered the first military award by the United States Armed Forces. There was the Fidelity Medallion, which is older, but it was issued for a specific event in 1780 and never awarded again. So the Badge of Military Merit is considered the oldest. And so the Purple Heart Medal was the successor to this. Now, in between there, you did have, you did have wound stripes and things like that, which I'm sure anybody that gets into World War I stuff has knows about wound stripes and stuff like that that you received for wounds that you got in battle and whatnot. So let's see. So that's that. Now, the Badge of Military Merit was established by George Washington in 1782. And it was only awarded to 3 Revolutionary War soldiers. So that's why I say you'll never find one, because they're just not out there, And it was never actually officially abolished until after World War I, when the Purple Heart Medal was created. So even though they never issued it, it was never actually taken off of the books. So, and then comes the Purple Heart Medal, which was created by War Department General Order Number 3, February 22nd, 1932. And in there, it authorized anybody that had been awarded the Meritorious Service Citation Certificate, the Army Wound Ribbon, or the Wound Chevrons, they could submit for a Purple Heart Medal. Now, I believe, I'm trying to read. I want to say that they had to be, for wounds, they had to be living to receive it. But if they were killed in action, the family could submit for it. I'd have to look into it, because I know, like, for example, the Indian Wars, there was only 3 Purple Heart Medals issued for the Indian Wars. And they would have been issued after 1932, because that's when it was created. So that's about as far back as the Purple Hearts went, as far as being reissued. So I know that was kind of long and extensive, and hopefully I answered the question.
I don't know if you mentioned too about, are they identifiable?
Yeah. Okay. So as far as identifying, the quickest thing is obviously the name. Every Purple Heart that was issued for a killed in action, missing in action, died of wounds, anything like that, any Purple Heart that was issued to next of kin is going to be engraved. Okay. And it's going to be engraved with the soldier's name.
All right.
So that's flat across the board. They did not issue to the next of kins without engraving it. Now, for wounds received, they did issue it engraved and unengraved. And, all the way up until modern day. So, anything that was and now the other category of stuff, in 1932 when it was created, anybody that submitted for a medal, those were also engraved. So, like the Indian War medals are engraved. And if my dear friend is listening, I'm going to convince him to come on the show and show one of them. But and hopefully he's watching and cursing me right now. But no, I will convince him to get on the show, and that would be one of the ones I'd want him to show, is the Indian Wars Purple Heart. But they are engraved, and sorry, reading comments. Thanks, Shane's Fines. But all the ones that were issued in 1932 for wounds in World War I or for next of kins that requested for their loved ones that were killed in action, those are all going to be engraved. Okay? So, now, the other side of it is there was a period of time when medals were numbered. And there is some traceability to numbers, but yet again, there's not. There's no database to look them up. There's records of some medals being recorded on orders, where the medals numbers are actually recorded. There's some records where their awards cards had the medal numbers written down, but there was never a very specific standard that was put out. The only other chunk of numbered medals was for Pearl Harbor, because you have different contracts. You have Navy contracts and you have Army contract Purple Hearts. It's the same medal, but it was paid for by the different branches. Well, when Pearl Harbor happened, there was so many medals that were needed because so many sailors were killed that the Army lent a chunk of Purple Heart medals that were Army contract to the Navy to be issued immediately to survivors of Pearl Harbor. Well, those numbers were written down. Not who received them, so to speak, but it could be in their records. But that chunk of numbers from that contract is known to exist. So if you can get a medal that's inside those numbers, you know that it was actually given out to a Pearl Harbor survivor because of that time frame, because it was so early in the war. So, I don't know. And it keeps going and going. This is why, I don't know. This is why it's fun to collect, because it just keeps getting more and more in depth,
Yeah, it is. The more you research the trails you find, and it becomes more of a paper chase. That's kind of fun because you're still doing the hunt. It's like a treasure hunt. You're still hunting down the history because every name you find or date you find or incident, adds to the provenance of what you have.
Oh yeah, well, and you know how the Army stuff is. I mean, it changes contract to contract, and I mean, and as far as like even just brooches, I mean, you have full wrap brooch, you have split brooch, you have slot brooches, you have crimped slot brooches, and you have crimped brooch. So just on one medal, you have all these different brooches, and and it just changes what it is. And then you can even get into the cases that they came in.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the oldest cases, and then you get into, you got white boxes and purple boxes and blue boxes and, the Navy and the Army, and then you can get into coffin cases with pearl buttons and one-liners and no-liners and two-liners and, or you get into the Navy contract coffin cases that have, they're called short title or short boxes. They have no edge on them, and then it just gets crazy. Not only that, I mean, I've even had coffin cases that were assembled backwards that I got money out of. I mean, we don't talk about money all the time, but like this opens up like
Right.
this, and when you lean it forward, you can read Purple Heart, right?
Right.
Well, I've actually had them where they opened the wrong way.
Oh.
So when it was sitting down like this and opened, it would look like this.
So there are box collector, or there are Purple Heart collectors that are now collecting the boxes and all the different variations of the boxes.
Oh yeah. Well, and they want to match them up, and
Yeah.
and then you get into the the Purple Hearts, and you got guys that they only collect split wrap, or they only collect full wrap, or they collect a certain unit's Purple Hearts, or
Yeah.
they only collect. Their goal is to get the lowest number Purple Heart they can possibly own. Even though the numbers are just crazy, and it really just depending on the contract. There's guys out there that are like, you get a number down into 3 digits, and I mean the price goes through the roof, even though it's not attributed to anybody.
Wow.
And it's not traceable, but it's a low numbered Purple Heart.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the collecting part of it.
Very cool.
So yeah, I mean the Purple Hearts, it really does get get nuts. I mean, I just want to kind of talk about his history and the Purple Heart, and and why I have him. And there is some controversy out there around him, and you will see stuff, and I'll address a little bit of it because I don't agree with a lot of it. Owning these veterans' Purple Hearts is honoring them. It's not taking something from the family. It's not taking something from the veteran. You know what I mean? It's preserving history. That's my stand on it. And 99.9999% of them are not stolen. I don't care who gets on the news and boo-hoos that their medal from Great Grandpa Joe was stolen. Because money does a lot of tricky things to people, and that's why you'll hear a lot of people, they find out that Grandpa was in Pearl Harbor and his Purple Heart is worth $5,000, and all of a sudden they want it back. And the thing is the family sold it in an estate sale 25 years ago.
They were offered to come in and take Grandpa's stuff, and nobody gave a crap about it.
Right.
and now they find out, yeah, that's happened a lot. Yeah.
Well, and I want to throw that out there because there is YouTube videos out there about Purple Hearts and returning them to families and finding the veterans, long lost, cousins, neighbors, best friends, dogs, owners, cats, whatever, and returning the Purple Heart to them, which is fine. I mean, hey, great. I'm glad, but it doesn't mean that a collector took it,
Yeah.
So, and I look at it as I honor these veterans. I mean, this medal won't get destroyed. It won't get ruined. It's actually going to go right back in my safe.
Well, not only are you're not just collecting it for the object. You've got the guy's name, the history. You know who owned it. You have his military. You know what his deeds were. You know what I mean? You have that's what's important about collecting, and I like that. Long ago, military collectibles was just to have that item. They collected a uniform or a pin or a badge or whatever. But now it's all of now we want to know who owned it, who wore it, his name, what he did, what his duties were, the whole. So you end up gathering, you're carrying this whole thing, this whole history, and all this data behind that item instead of just that item. Just saying, oh look, I got this badge or I got this Purple Heart. Knowing who it was, what he did, and all that. That's the important part about collecting that stuff. Yeah. Yeah,
and that's just it. It's the history, and I'm still continuing to research it. It's about having time. I mean, and you could, like you said, tracking down paper trails is all part of it. It takes time. So, but I just want to make sure that I got these questions answered. Is there a way to track whose Purple Heart it belonged to when they find it at the show or somewhere? Is it marked somewhere? Yeah, so some aren't marked and some are, and some are faked. I mean, people will do their damnedest to, create a Coast Guard Purple Heart from World War I or whenever, because that's, if it goes for a lot of money, people will fake it. So there are stuff out there that's faked where people have engraved names on the back of them and try to pawn them off. But they're not all marked. A lot of them are unmarked. Actually, I bought a grouping from Sean. He sold me a grouping with medals in it that were not engraved, but it came from his father, not his father directly, but like his father had bought it somewhere. And I hope you don't mind me sharing, Sean. I think you did.
No, go for it.
Yeah. So his father bought this stuff somewhere, probably from an estate, but it has all her photos, it had all her paperwork, and it had her medals, and actually photos of the medals being presented to her. Oh. And the medals are not engraved, the medals are not numbered, they're just standard issued medals for that time period. So that's what would be called an attributed medal, because it's not engraved, so you can't call it named, and it's not engraved, so you can't call it engraved. So it's attributed to her. And I mean, 95% of the collectors out there would be confident that those were the medals she was given, simply because it was all found together and kept together, Yeah. So not everything is marked. Going to shows and stuff, you got to be a little bit more wary about it. Now, you know, you go to some estate sale out in the middle of the country, and you know they've got all the Militaria thrown in a box on the table. Chances are it all came from the same person, you know. So you got to kind of look at your environment. But Angie Martin, hey Angie, she wants to know what were the original metals made of? What metal would it be? Sterling. There are sterling Purple Hearts out there, yes, and also they are not gold. Official record. There is no gold in a Purple Heart. Do not cut a Purple Heart in half looking for gold.
Or melt it down.
There's no gold in there. Gold collectors out there, or gold diggers, or gold sourcers, or resellers, or pickers, whatever you call yourself. There's no gold in the Purple Heart. Quit destroying Purple Hearts. There's no gold in them. I've seen more than one where the name was ground off with an angle grinder looking for gold. Destroyed history looking for gold. There's no damn gold in there. And the ones that are made out of sterling, newsflash, they're worth about 100 times more than the spot price of sterling. So don't go melt it down either. All right, so we'll get that out of the way. Yes, sterling. Now I don't know. They're probably made out of some sort of brass base metal painted. The current ones are probably made out of some radioactive caustic tin aluminum in China or something. But I don't know what the current ones are, but they've gotten cheaper as time's gone on. But yeah, so the original ones there are some that were made out of sterling. Obviously, that was a real popular metal. What's that?
Yeah. So that would go along with not taking care of our veterans.
Yeah. Well, hey, you'd be amazed. I mean, Insignia's gotten cheap. We'll just put it that way. That's why the old stuff's part of why it's so collectible. And I mean, I wore a sterling CIB my last year in the Army, and it was World War II issue. But the quality is just, I mean, unmatched. And yeah, I had to polish it. You know, it didn't have a shellac on it and stuff, but it was cool and it looked better than everybody else's, you know. But you can't even buy them in sterling anymore. So let's see. Hey, Wade. Hey, he wants to know what's up with the fish.
I was telling him, I have had that fish swimming crooked for a couple of weeks now, and I've been waiting for the first person to say something about my crooked fish.
So if you heard me laugh one time, that's when I first saw that question.
Okay.
I started laughing. I was like, "Yeah, finally somebody noticed."
We talked about giving a prize to the first person that noticed it.
Well, hey, that's about all I've got. I've jabbered for a while now. I'm going to try to participate in the comments a little bit. And hey, Sean, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick. Oh. I appreciate you popping in.
Yeah. I'm Cool Toads, as you know. I have a channel here too, Cool Toads, and I sell on eBay and Amazon, which was pretty cool today. I got, sorry, we destroyed your property, quote unquote. So they sent me $50 today. I was like, okay, cool, awesome. But I only paid 9 cents each for all of it, so not yeah. Anyway. Where was I? Oh, I have Toadcast on Friday nights as well. So, 5 o'clock Pacific.
Awesome, Sean. Well, we appreciate you keeping track of our comments.
And so I don't forget, I will be late next week too. So.
Okay. No worries, man.
For other reasons, but yeah.
We'll still be here.
Finally, for a reason that affects me. Yay.
Hey, there you go. We'll leave the lights on, Sean, so you can.
All right.
Oh, let's see. Queen City Picker wants to know what a CIB is. A CIB is a combat infantryman badge, and I actually have some on the uniforms behind me. Oh. Let's see. Can we get a good picture of it?
That's the blue, the one with the rifle, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to get this in there. There we go. I can get it moved correctly. So that's what a CIB is. Combat Infantryman badge. It's a rifle on a background of blue with a laurel wreath behind it, and it's issued to infantry soldiers that have been actively engaged in combat with an enemy. That's the basic criteria for it.
Is it always pinned right there, like over the heart, kind of?
Yeah.
Always? Okay.
Yeah, it's always on the left side. That's because that's where your ribbons or medals go and your badges. Because you can have combat infantryman badge, there's a combat medical badge, the combat action badge, whatever.
That's one of the things I love.
I'm sure I'll get some hate for downplaying that one, but I don't like it.
That's one of the things I love watching with the stolen valor videos and some of those, and they're like, oh, where'd you get that? And where'd you get that one? Oh, well, this one's supposed to be over here. This one's supposed to be over here. Well, then they're like trying to defend it. It's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just it. I mean, it all has a place in the uniform. And it's all, I mean, like the medals, the ribbons represent medals, is what that is. You can wear either or on your uniform. Most people just select to wear the ribbons because then they don't have to keep the actual medal clean. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
That's why you always see them with ribbons. But the
more efficient.
ribbons on the right side, those are unit ribbons.
Oh, okay.
You must wear the ribbon.
What's that?
You must wear the ribbon. Why don't you want to wear the ribbon?
You must wear the ribbon.
Wait, you don't have the ribbon. What? You don't want to wear the ribbon?
Yeah. Yeah, so that is one of the ways they do get the stolen valor guys all the time, is because they don't have a clue, because even being in the army, you don't have a clue sometimes. So, but your medals and ribbons that you received as a soldier have always been worn on the left side. I mean, even when you look back, back into the 1800s, they were always. Every medal they were ever issued or ribbon was always worn on the left side, always above the heart. So, but that pretty much wraps up me. Anyways, I don't want to steal the entire show. I've definitely had fun talking about my passion for an extended length of time tonight. Hopefully, I haven't completely bored and confused everybody. So who wants to go next, Drew or Dan?
Go for it, Dan.
Okay.
All right, Dan, you're on.
So one of the things I'm going to show you tonight, I'll probably just show you one thing, because I can kind of dwell on this a little bit because I got a lot of them. So one of the things that I started collecting a long time ago is pilot logbooks. And they were easy to come by. And one thing is... I'm a pilot. Once you have your license, you're a pilot forever. You just have to keep it up. I haven't flown in a little while, but I used to own an airplane. Anyhow, my flying days are a bit over. I think a little too expensive. But anyhow, I've always collected logbooks, and the reason why is that your whole history of when you start training, the first minute you're in the pilot seat, you can log into this book. So every time you're in the pilot seat and you're in control of the airplane, if you have an instructor, even if you don't have your license and you have an instructor with you who's in control, you can log pilot in command on this, or you can have an instructor sign off that also each one of those. So it's kind of a, I say prestigious, it's not, but it's a cool history to go back and look, because you not only do you put, like in some of these, not only do you put the actual times, like how long you're in the air and all that kind of stuff, you put where you took off from, where you landed, you put there's a comment in there. I used to always put, if I had passengers, who my passengers were. I always put if it's a night takeoff or night landing, you just, so when you look at that one line, you kind of remember that flight. It's like a diary of that specific flight that you took from beginning to end. So I have a lot of these different kinds of books. I just wanted to show you a few of them just to start off with. This is what you kind of see. This style is still kind of what they use today. Um, Mine is similar to this one, but I have these are some of the ones I've picked up over the years, and I have two different kinds. I have some that were used for civil aviation, and I have some that were used for military, and these become more the military kind. These are the ones issued by, believe this is a Navy one. And then the format's a little different. But what's cool about some of the really old ones is looking at the kinds of airplanes that were flown. You see some of the flying ones. One of the oldest ones I have is this one, and this is really cool. Just the book itself, it's very unique.
Texaco.
Yeah, it's got the Texaco logo because it was probably there was a little fixed base operator that sold pilot supplies, and it was probably he got these from he was selling fuel for Texaco, so this is probably the logbooks that he sold when he was at his fixed base operator. Got the guy's name written in pen on the outside of it, and that's usually the case. There's a place in here. It's for William H. Russell. The first part of this has some interesting things. When you're certified for different types of your flight career, you would get these little certification certificates. This is embossed. This is one of the first pages in here, and this one was for. Oh, this just states that some pilots do or some instructors do this or not, but when you sign off, he had this notarized actually, uh, December 7th, 1937, that he swears that everything in this book is true and accurate. Okay, so that it's not forged. All right, so you don't forge your time and everything. I don't. They don't do this anymore, which is kind of rare to see this. That he had to have that he notarized. He had it notarized with his signature, basically saying that, I swear that everything in this book is true and honest. So back in the day, back in the 30s, it was called the Civil Aviation Aeronautics Aviation, or CAA, Civil Aeronautics Association. That's who governed and controlled the airports and the airspaces and tracked airplanes, which was very little technology back then to do that. Then in the 60s, it became the FAA. The FAA, the federal government took it over with that, and anyhow, there was more sophisticated that by then in the 60s, more sophisticated things like radar, um, a lot of different newer technologies, and their control was wider spread over the oceans and things like that. So, but anyhow, what's cool about this one? This one actually started in the 1930s. 1936 is the date, the first entry in here, and so you can sit here and look at his first 58-minute flight. Was practicing takeoffs and landings, and this is dual, which means he was with an instructor, and then you just can start going through this. So it's kind of fun to sit here and go through all of these. There's one of these that I have that was dated in the 80s that I picked up at an estate sale. And so I started going through it, and then I realized that it stops at a certain point. And so I one second, somebody's trying to call me. It stopped at a certain point, and it was like a blank page. And so you can look up airplane tail numbers online. The NTSB it's a federal website. It's public information. You can look up the results of airplane crashes all over the country. And so I looked up the tail number on this to see what happened to this airplane. Come to find out, this guy crashed his airplane at a takeoff on one of the runways he took off of. So then his records began again, and what it was is he got the FAA suspended his license, and then the FAA had him go through retraining. So the next grouping in his book is all his retraining. He had to go back with an instructor and go over emergency landings, and I mean, there's a whole slew of things he had to go over again. And then again, at the very end, it just abruptly stops. So I hope he didn't crash again. I didn't find any record of another airplane crash, but it may have just been that he gave it up, which generally happens. Most all these logbooks, I'll go through like 3 or 4 pages, and then there's maybe 10 or 15 hours, and then boom, there's nothing. They just give it up. Either that, or they lost their logbook and started up on another logbook. But generally.
You sure that doesn't say Harrison Ford in it?
Oh, I wish it did, man. I'd love to have one of those, man.
His logbook will be awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's going to get back up in the air. I guess he might, but because I heard it's one of those things.
If they will let him, he will do it. Believe me. As a pilot, you can't keep a pilot out of the air. I mean,
you can't keep Han Solo down.
Yeah, you can't keep Han
Right?
Solo. My favorite pictures were, I don't know if you saw them circulating. There was the Millennium Falcon crashed on a golf course, and then there was
Oh God, that was funny.
and then there was a picture they took from the news picture of the emergency guys carrying a stretcher that had Harrison Ford on it, except they had replaced it with the carbonite Harrison Ford, the slab of carbonite. They were carrying like the slab of carbonite when they were carrying it off in there. It was funny. Oh, the best one was the crashed PT-19, which, by the way, was a really cool airplane. I mean, it was worth a lot of money, that airplane that he was flying. It was a crashed picture of the crashed PT-19, and in the foreground, right off of the edge, you see the back of Boba Fett standing there, like with his gun up, like he was the one that shot him down out of the air. It was a cool image. I love that. I was loved watching this. So then another thing was, like I said, there's different kinds, military, and then the military ones, you kind of get to check out. Most of them are all trainers in the beginning. Okay, so what I'm saving to last is one of my best ones. So what this is, it's a file folder, and it has the guy's name right there. You can see it. Donald. So this is a military file folder. It's like the old cardboardy stuff, it's all that really stiff cardboard. And so in it is the entire record. I'm gonna try to hold this up. Some of the pages are falling out of it. So that's basically the entire training record of this pilot. In 1942, he was stationed in Las Vegas, and there was a gunnery school, Army Air Force gunnery school in Las Vegas in 1942. And he was training. He was a pilot of a B-17, B-17G to be exact. So in the beginning of it, it starts off with his basic maneuvers, because what he's doing is he's flying the plane, and the gunnery guys that are working the guns are all trainees. He has to learn how to fly the plane so that they can get a better shot, right? Or so they can maneuver and they can protect him. So they all have to train together for this. So he's got all students in his plane, and he's learning to fly. He's also learning to fly with these guys in the plane, learning to shoot, right, at the same time. Now, the B-17 has a lot of guns. There's one in the sides on the windows. There's the one underneath that's hanging underneath. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about with the B-17. There's one in the very, very tippy tail. Guy lays on his belly, goes way up into the very tippy tail, lays on his belly, and he's looking out the tail of the plane. There's one in the front where the bombardier's at. There's guns there too. And there's one on the top. I think I said the top gunner's guys up there too. So there's a lot of guns on this thing. So could be as many as like 12 guys in this plane. So anyhow, this is the record of his training as he's in Vegas, and he is working his way through his training. These are all certificates. So as he makes his way, he passed some of the simple ones. You have to know how to work the radio, and you don't have to work. Back then, you had to know Morse code, because a lot of your radio communications were Morse code. So he had to learn his Morse code. So there's his radio code testing. He was also actually stationed in Roswell, New Mexico, which was the initial B-17 training course. So yeah. Roswell, right? Roswell, New Mexico.
Yeah.
In 1942.
It wasn't Area 51,
That
was
is
it,
up to
man?
value right there.
Yeah. So he was in
What year
Roswell.
was this? This was 42.
Well, this was actually 1943. 43, 42, actually 42,
Wow.
So he had to go to Roswell for training there because that's what their airport was. See, I actually learned to fly around Roswell. I used to live in New Mexico, in Artesia, New
Mhm.
Mexico. I got my pilot's license there, but I used to fly to the Roswell airport all the time. This is before the whole UFO thing even happened. Nobody knew about it in the 70s. That didn't come out till
Mhm.
like 1985 or something like that. Did all that talk about the crashed UFO and all that what was that book? There was a couple books that came out about that time. Anyhow,
I don't
um,
know. I've sold about a half a dozen UFO books on Amazon in the last couple weeks.
yeah. So anyhow, so that's what it says. So I'm going through this record, and the very last page, it goes blank. And let's see, I can't remember. I had it marked here, and let me see if I can find it again. The very last page, it goes blank, and basically it just says pilot deceased. And so when I saw this, I was like, okay, already it spiked my curiosity, So what happened? What happened to this guy? So I started Googling his name, and I actually got a hit on the most interesting story that I have ever heard. And what it is, I found this website called aircraft www.warbirdcrash.com. And
Oh,
what it is,
so he crashed in the service.
well, he crashed in the United States while in service, in training. Okay.
Okay, yeah, because those are all there's actually more than one site that has all the has
Right.
crash
Well,
reports.
there's reported as many as that 15,500 pilots or flyers died in the U.S. during training during World War II. So there's this website that tracks a lot of those crashes, the crash sites per se. So you can actually go there, and there people are going out there and actually finding parts of the airplanes still out there, the ones in the desert and all this. This crash that this guy was in happened in Las Vegas. So here's the details of the story, which even makes it more interesting. So he was in a training flight in his B-17. Nearby was a AT-6, which is a fighter trainer. They use the American AT-6s. The North American AT-6s were trainers for fighter fighter pilots, and they were doing maneuvers, but not on the same training. So one guy was doing his thing, and the B-17 was doing their own thing. Well, they got too close. Um, there was a witness, and another AT-6, another pilot had witnessed the AT-6 was up and high about 700 feet. Now they were at 8,000 feet when this was going on, and the pilot of the AT-6 made a turning dive, and evidently didn't see. And at the same time, the B-17 came into it, and the AT-6 went through the back of the top of the fuselage, behind the cockpit, and through the wing around the third engine, and the plane exploded in midair, and pieces went everywhere. Well, the interesting part about this is that the tail section fell out of the sky and landed on the ground. The tail gunner was still in that section of airplane, and he survived. He was critically injured, but he actually survived. And in this website, there's a story about, I think there's only three, there's like three stories ever of tail gunners and B-17s actually surviving a midair or a crash, where the tail gunner survived free falling from 8,000 feet in the tail section of a B-17, and he actually survived. So this man, this Douglas C.M. Westhaver, who I have his record here, was the pilot of that plane that the tail gunner survived when it hit the ground during that crash. So
Wow.
talk about, I mean, when I'm discovering this, I'm going, oh my gosh, that is so interesting. I mean, I mean, it's sad because like 12 people were in the plane that were killed. They were all students for gunnery training. But the fact that this particular one is the one that a survivor, there was a survivor from it. So the records there were some updates to the records that just said that they heard that he was in critical condition, or there were some records about him being in critical condition, but they don't know how much longer he survived, or if he's ever did, or what his condition was after that. But they have this name. His name is. I have all the names of the gunner. He was a student gunner, Corporal Thomas K. Mang, M-A-N-G, and he fell to earth trapped in the severed B-17 tail section. Miraculously survived the crash, but sustained serious injuries. So there's like stories behind everything, whether it be that record or any of these other records that I have in pilot logbooks that are cool and they're fascinating to me. The airplanes they flew, the places they were, and that kind of stuff. It's very, very interesting. So that is my piece. If anyone has any questions,
the only thing I could think of as far as that tail section and surviving is simply terminal velocity must have been reduced because of the mass.
Yeah, the shape of it. I don't know how much of it there was, because that's pretty big. If it was all the way up to where the wing from the
right. Well, because like if you think of like a cone, if that was the heavy end of it, it would have been trapping air and reducing the terminal velocity. The only reason I think of that is I grew up in Buffalo, and there's several stories on the of people going over the falls in Niagara, right?
Oh yeah,
it was a real big thing, you hear about when you're a kid, but there are survivors, and most of them are children.
Yeah.
That have gone over the falls, and it's because the what would you call it? The up breeze or whatever you want to call it, the wind that comes off of the river at the bottom of the draft. There you go. The updraft, and the child being so light that it reduces their terminal velocity, so when they hit the water, it doesn't kill them.
Yeah.
Whereas an adult, it kills them on impact.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the only thing I could think of as far as why they survived in the tail section.
Plus, there's wings. There's wings on that section too. There's the whole tail the stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer. If it was all intact, it could have like semi-flew. You know what I mean? Glided, not really gently, but it would have. It could have taken an angle, a long swooping angle, and landed.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
that's the other thing. I had a mortar instructor when I was in basic training. It was the last thing he could do, and he burned in on a mountain in Alaska and survived.
Wow.
And it's because he landed on the hillside. But he was doing a free fall jump, and his chute malfunctioned, and then his reserve malfunctioned. Wow. And he just pointed towards the side of the hill and landed on the side of the mountain.
Just body just did it?
Crushed both his legs and screwed his back up. And, I mean, he hobbled around and taught us how to shoot mortars. He's just trying to finish out his time, Wow. But he burned in on the side of a mountain. And that's the only thing that saved him is he didn't have a straight impact. He hit and slid. So
slowed him down.
Yeah.
It hurt, but it slowed him down.
He survived.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was always fun to meet those kind of guys in the military, because those are the guys that love the Army. That's all there is to it, because he could have got out 10 times over. Yeah. But so. I mean, I guess it makes sense how like you were saying with the stabilizers, if it created a gliding trajectory instead of just a rock.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been gentle. It would have been still pretty steep, but it may have slowed it down just enough to bounce him. Yeah. But anyhow.
Interesting. Maybe we ought to submit that to MythBusters.
Oh yeah, that's an idea. How do they survive living in the tail section? And see what they'll drop. What do they call that dummy they have? Buster.
Yeah.
Buster from a tail section or an airplane.
I'm gonna look into that. I'll link this show, and we'll see if we can get on MythBusters about how they survived in a tail section of a bomber.
Yeah.
Is that show on? Is that show on anymore? I don't think it is it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they just don't. I don't think they run as long of seasons. It's
Yeah.
still one of my favorite shows. I think it's freaking hilarious. But Queen City Picker wants to. Have you found many logs
Oh,
owned by women?
yes, I
Any
do.
wasp logs?
Yep, I have 3 or 4 logbooks now. She wasn't military, just she was a female pilot. Matter of fact, I took my books out. I just dumped them all over here, and I'm trying to go through to find the interesting. And I know I have one. I do have one. I gotta look for it. I know
Well, you're
I
going
have
to
a.
prove Angie Martin wrong because she says, I bet he doesn't have a one.
Yes, I do.
Like
I
we're
have
hating
about.
on female pilots or something.
Yes, I do. I have about 4 of them actually from the
Well,
same
there you
woman.
go, Angie. Well,
And
Dan saved those. And
while the show's
next
going
show,
on,
if we do wild, we'll do women in the military. How
We're
about
still
There you go.
we're still looking for Amelia Earhart's logbook.
that? Yeah.
hey,
Oh, I have that right here. You want it?
How'd you
I
get it, Sean? Did you take that out of my filing cabinet? Let me check.
Some crack addict down the street gave it to me. I don't know where he got it though.
I have a piece. I have a piece of a leather Amelia Earhart flying jacket. It's not like the one she took with her when she left, but it was one of her. It's a little square piece. It's got a certificate of authenticity and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know if it's real.
Well, that's
I thought it was
cool.
cool. I thought it was cool, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
I've
cool.
got some. I have some like Charles Lindbergh postcards and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
cool. Well, we'll get over to Drew. He's over there. He's over there itching, trying to climb through the
Okay.
screen with
Yeah.
some sort of electronic device. Everybody, cover your eyes. He's probably trying to steal.
Oh
information.
yeah, I love
You know what
that.
that?
Lip.
Yeah. Sean, did you have one of those?
Yep, I did. It was
Really?
great. Yeah.
So I found this at the Goodwill the other day, and I was just like kind of excited, but and the battery compartment was fine. It's from 1977. It's one of the first handheld games. Is that right, Sean?
Yeah.
One
It's
of them.
almost like Pong in your hand, basically.
Yeah. So it's got this wind-up mechanism, and then it's got a couple switches. But unfortunately, I stuck the
The lights
batteries
not-
in there, and the lights don't work.
Uh,
It doesn't light up. So tell me what I'm supposed to see here. Is it just like playing tennis?
it's
Pong?
just like Pong, you know, the little I guess ball-looking thing, the square, goes
Yeah.
back and forth. It kind of jumps a little bit to the other side, and then the other person has to hit whatever number that they think it's going to land on, and then it goes back.
And so,
they get
and so when
points
you're
based on that.
when you're playing with another partner, you put this on the table, and you both have that ability. You're not going to both hold this in your hand.
No, yeah, it would go on a table or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was very cool, retro. I really wished it worked. You know, it turns out they're not worth that. They're not worth all that much. But you know, sometimes
they're
you come
fun.
across this stuff, and I see 1977, and I start freaking out a little bit. Next is a really, really nice piece of glass. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's called Pastilles Beatrix Val's Mint. And what this is a candy jar. And this company, Beatrix Val's, is a very old candy maker. They used to make these little mint candies that were in those little tin boxes back in the turn of the century, 1910, 1920. I think this is probably just about 100 years old, this thing. You know?
Is that hand painted on there, or is it like a screen?
This is mass produced, but it's printed, you know, I mean, but in the old days this stuff looked like it was hand, you know,
So
stroke.
it's probably like a silk screen or something.
Yeah, let's see. Is that better?
Okay. Cool.
That's one of those you go in there and grab one for a quarter or whatever.
Yeah,
a penny probably.
Yeah, and it was for probably a little drugstore display thing or whatever.
Ooh.
And it's just something really cool from days gone by. And I thought it was French. It seems like a French thing. I have to do more research on it. Now, it did come with a top right here. and I don't know if the top was metal or also glass, so that's an interesting thing, but I thought it was cool. Next, a really cool, this thing's probably over 100, it's probably over 100-year-old Japanese pagoda lantern.
Oh, cool.
And they would call this maybe a snow lantern.
Are those hearts in the top?
Yeah, there are hearts in the top. Look at that.
Boy, the patina on that thing is just freaking awesome.
Yeah, this might be more like 200 years old for all I know, but
Yeah,
kinda looks-
I mean, do you guys get a lot of salt damage out there?
no, not where I am. Nope. I mean, not where I am. I'm not that close to the beach, but
Okay, yeah, I mean, that could have easily been. It's one of those things when you find stuff out near the coast, sometimes the age is, sped up a little bit by the.
yeah. Now you'll see a lot of repros of this these days, and you can tell this is the real deal. It's got that heavy quality, and it's really got that, as you said, that patina on the.
You should really be able to tell in the hinges because that should all be hand cut and punched.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just thought it's very cool for the garden, a hanging lantern, or you can just put it right on its feet. And
You're gonna put a candle or anything in there, a light of some
yeah,
sort?
put some candles in there before. It looks really cool because then the hearts light up on the top.
Yeah,
And
no, that thing's cool, man.
yeah, in
Yeah.
Japan, these used to be outside people's houses, and the snow would collect on the top here, and very often they're made out of granite. That you'll see them in Japan, and they're so beautiful when the snow falls on them. And then I think the guy puts a little candle in there for what I think when he's coming home drunk, he can find his house.
Probably, huh?
Yeah. So that's cool. And then finishing up with one more item.
And where did you find that at? Other than like Goodwill or something? Or
That
one
was
of your antique places?
that was an antique store, and I've had that one for a long time. That
Cool.
one's not. That's not
Yeah.
new. I just saw
If
it
I had
sitting
that one,
there.
it wouldn't be going anywhere either.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought I saw it there sitting on the floor. I thought I'd show you.
It's
This
cool.
I picked up today, so this is kind of exciting. Now I know you guys have talked about this before. We have talked about this before. Chad brought out his panoramic view. I think Chad's is a different type of panoramic. It's like that super panoramic. This one's just like the normal one. Are you guys picking up any of that?
Yeah, Chad's
Yeah.
is what's called a yard-long photograph. Yours is what's called a panoramic. Well, yours is a panoramic. His would have been a yard-long because how long it is.
So you got the it's a class photo from a high school. I didn't read it right off the bat, but they're posing right outside the Capitol building in Washington D.C.
That is crazy.
That great.
That's
And you know
cool.
what? I saw this last week at a store, not this one, but another one where, and I'm probably going to go buy it just because I picked this up. It's a whole bunch of people standing in the same pose, right, with the Capitol building in back, but they're in the laundry business, like the early dry cleaner business. And I think it was a thing. I think it was a thing they used to do, like when you'd have a big convention or a big group of people. Let's go pose in front of the Capitol.
It was just the one spot to get the best photo. Well,
Yeah,
that,
I mean, look at-
check out the studio because it could just be from the same studio, and that's where that studio said, "Hey, we'll go out right here," and that's where they always took the photos.
Yeah. Now I really was looking for somebody. Usually, right in the center is usually like the guy, like in your photo, like the general or the colonel or something.
Right.
I was really looking for like Eleanor Roosevelt out there or something, but
No such luck, huh?
yeah, let's see. This is 19. It's got a date on it. It's 1936,
Oh, that's cool because that's pre-war. So
and it's Norwood High School, class of 36. and it's framed in this really kind of cool, kind
I
of
wonder
older.
how many. I wonder how many World War II veterans are in that photo.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're right. It is just before World War II. These guys would have gone to war.
Mm.
But yeah, nice.
36. I mean, it would have been. Let's see, we entered in 42.
Yeah.
So.
But isn't that weird? Like when you see something, as a picker, and you've never really seen it before, to be able to buy it, and then you find another one, and
Yeah,
it's
it's odd. Like,
so
yeah.
weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's weird.
Well, that's how you become a collector / hoarder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like lanterns like that. If
yeah.
I found lanterns like that often, man, yeah, I would have them all over the place.
Well, it's like the photos, Now you found another one, so you're gonna add that to it, and then you'll be out and you'll see a third one, and you're like, "Man, I gotta have it. I've got 2 already."
I know. Might as well add another one.
Fast forward that bad boy 20 years, and Drew's just added a room to his apartment to hold all the photos in front of the Capitol building.
Yeah. Now, what would be interesting, I have to look up that high school and see where that high school is. I don't know if it's in Washington or somewhere else. I would imagine it is Washington. And we'll see, I'll do a little bit of, research on that high school. And I think maybe, the kids of the parents who went to that high school might be interested in that sort of thing, I don't know.
True.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, would be interesting if you could find a yearbook. You'd probably identify everybody.
Yeah, but it's just, you're right. That would be cool. You're right. I need to advertise for 1936 Norwood High School yearbook.
Yeah.
And then pick all those.
You could probably match. You got a clear enough photo, and this is where we don't talk the reselling side, but where I've made money before is, like researching people that are in yearbooks, especially like West Point yearbooks, and finding their military connection, because you get somebody that is a, the cliche term of a war hero, meaning they've received several high valor medals or they became a general. There's somebody out there that will pay big money for that because that's what they collect.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of same thing with that photo. I mean, you start identifying names, you could have senators. I mean, hell, the 1975 mayor of Washington, D.C. could be in that photo.
Marion Barry?
I don't know, whoever, but you know what I mean, though? That's the cool thing about photos, when you can start identifying the people, you can find out later, and you connect more collectors to that image.
It's funny, the guy who sells this to me, you guys, I run into him going to these shops, and I see him and I go, "Hey, what's going on?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, I have something to show you." He's this European guy, and he opens up his trunk and he shows me some outrageous shit, and I usually end up buying it. Yeah, it's like I'm dialed in with him, and so it's really funny, the stuff he shows me in the back of his trunk. It's like crazy. So he said, "Look," he goes, "Look, they're all white people in the photograph." Because you're right. There's no. I mean, it's such an I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, the schools would have been segregated at the time.
Well, you know what? I take that back. There might be one or two. But
I mean, and that is an aspect of photo collecting, especially from that time period. That people do look for is the integrated schools and classes, because anything that goes against the norm of the time, you're going to have a collector for it. And that would have been the norm. It would not have been normal in that time period to have an integrated class.
I would have never really picked up on that, and it's just the way he said it, and it cracked me up, and I noticed, yeah, you're right, it's pretty segregated, 1936.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I've had photographs. I probably have a picture of it somewhere. I mean, I sold it a long time ago, but it was a I want to say it was from like the 20s. Might have been teens, but it was a a country class, probably third, fourth grade. But there was one black girl in the class photo. And I mean, I know some Black Americana collector bought it. I don't remember who it was, but that was considered an extreme oddity, because here you had all these country kids. I mean, there was like 30 some kids in the photo, and one black student.
No,
So,
in that case, like that kind of cases back then, do you think those black families might have had some money? Because I know money talks even back then. Hey, they were prominent or something at least, or
I don't think it was probably that. I think it probably had to do with the community.
Okay.
Just like it is now, where you go into some communities and things are widely accepted and very friendly, and you go into other communities where it's not.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
you have that,
I do.
You still have that today, and I think that's probably more of what it was, because these were definitely not. This was country. I mean, they were standing in front of a one-room schoolhouse. It wasn't in the city. You know what I mean?
Well, it doesn't take much to be rich then. Yeah, you could have all your teeth and be considered rich back then, but
Right. But I mean, like, kids didn't have shoes on, stuff like that. Like, you could tell
it wasn't like
these were country
okay.
kids. They were probably farmers. But it was from the teens to the 20s. So I mean, well after Civil War, after slavery was abolished, it was just probably that community. They probably a farming family, and sent their girl to school.
Gotcha.
You didn't have a problem with it, so that was just the way it was. But to have that photo, it's that little capsule of time, and it goes against the norms of that time period. So there's collectors for it.
True.
It's kind of like having when you see Civil War period photographs of black families that are affluent, which very, very rare to find.
Well, yeah. That's kind of why I was thinking that. I was like,
right
here they actually made their money or whatever, and
I got a question. Eric. As far as Civil War autographs or signatures, do you think in general they're more valuable when they're from Confederate officers?
Yes and no. There's always going to be the commons and the ones that aren't so common. Any identified photos of any officers from the Civil War have value. That makes sense.
How about if they're just signature and not photos?
Yeah, but the problem with the signature is authenticating it.
Well, when you can tell clearly that it's a real signature on real old paper with a fountain pen.
Do you have something?
Is
that what you're asking?
That real person's signature. Here's the thing, Drew. They've been faking stuff since the beginning of time. And I would not doubt a Confederate general signature to have been faked within 20 years after the Civil War.
Especially if it's like Robert E. Lee.
You know what I mean?
Somebody famous.
Because if there's a collector for it, there's a fake market for it. You know what I mean? And I mean, I have, and not only that, I mean, it might have been something that it could have been clipped from a document that was signed by a secretary with no intent of ever being fake, but somebody mounts it in a frame and does this and does that to then somebody later on. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So, like, above and beyond that, let's say it's not a fake, okay? So then, usually the Confederate stuff, a Confederate sword, a Confederate gun, they all do better than
Yeah, they do. When it comes to the paper side of it, not as wide as, like, say, a sword.
As a gap, okay.
Because it's just when you get into photos and paper, you're talking about a much smaller group of collectors.
Right.
That like photos and paper and stuff like that, as opposed to weaponry or uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
So your values it's much closer, because somebody's like, well, hey, I collect Civil War signatures and I've got 3 dozen, Confederate general signatures. So the value's just not up there. Whereas when you get into weaponry stuff, a guy that owns 3 dozen, Confederate swords has got, $1 million collection on his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Not $1 million, but you know what I mean. Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
there's just so many more collectors out there for that kind of stuff. But where you got that signature, you said?
No, I have an opportunity possibly coming up where I might be able to acquire something like that.
Just let me know. I mean, do some research on it, because Confederate stuff is scary, scary, scary.
No,
Civil
I don't
War
actually. I don't actually think it's probably Confederate. I was just wanting to get your opinion on that. I have a feeling it's from the North.
Yeah. Well, and again, you should. I mean, if it's Union, it'll be a little bit easier for you to authenticate it yourself.
Okay.
Because the Union's, even though the Civil War stuff is heavily faked, the Union is less faked than the Confederate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's gonna be pretty. I thought I was gonna have it in my hand today, guys, and I screwed up because it was that same guy who was showing me that out of his trunk.
Oh, really? Well, and for you know how it is. For the right amount, sometimes it's worth the risk,
Yeah.
But well, let's get to this last question real quick, or we'll keep jibber jabbering all night.
But when I do pick that up, because I think I will be able to get it, I will bring it here on the Collector's Catacomb. You guys are going to be excited, I think. If I get it, we'll see.
Well, and Swamp Picker wants to know, does anyone collect yearbooks, high school or college? I found in 1977 is Elvis from a show he did there. Yes, yearbooks are highly collectible. Swamp
Here's
Picker.
one. 1950 from, where is this? June 1950 from a high school in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, I picked up a couple from Ohio State. It was 58 and 59 or something like that. And I must have spent, oh my gosh, I must have spent like 3 hours looking at every single name in that book. I mean, there were a lot of that book is about that big.
You gotta learn the shortcut, bud.
Well, here's what I did: is I would like Google who graduated, Ohio State, or who attended Ohio State, blah blah blah, this time, this time, and I would get celebrities that attended there but didn't attend during that time period. And what's your shortcut?
Wikipedia.
What do you mean? What do they have?
Go to the school site on Wikipedia, and they'll have notable alum listed in the bottom.
Okay. I think I found that when doing my search for the other way. I ended up at Wikipedia, and notable.
Notable alumni are listed on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And for me, if it's not listed there, I know Wikipedia is public information and all that other crap, but if it's not listed on Wikipedia as notable alum, I just move on. Yeah. Because there's, like you were saying, scrolling through it takes forever.
Oh my gosh, I looked through every
I've had
picture.
Great hits out of Wikipedia.
Yeah.
On notable alum for yearbooks.
Yeah.
How do you spell alum? How do you spell alum?
What's that?
How do you spell alum? A-L-U-M?
Yeah. Alum. Yep.
Alum.
Alum, and then Nye if you want to add Nye on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be on the Wikipedia now. Actually, that gives me a great idea since we're talking yearbooks. That will be next week's show unless we find a guest. So if we find a guest, we'll do something different. But if not, does that sound good, guys? We'll talk yearbooks next week.
Hey.
I've got some great West Point ones and stuff that I can share. And I'll even pull up a few to be on the lookout for. As collectors, yearbooks that you want to find, kind of like Sharon Tate. That's a Goodyear book from El Paso that is highly collected. But yeah, so that'll be next week's show.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, I mean there's several out there that definitely bring a lot of interest with collectors. So with that said, make sure you check out the other shows going on. You got the Toadcast tomorrow night, right, Sean?
Yep.
And our show on Sunday, Profit Talk Monday, Green Room on Tuesday. You got the Reseller Wake Up throughout the week. Chad's got Picker's Church on Sunday, meet and greet, and then I don't know, Caesar and Robert Bagley. I think they got a show some night of the week. Thrifty
Monday
Lounge
also.
is on Tuesdays now again. I don't know. There's a whole lot of shows. Go check out the Facebook groups and find all the links. It's about all I can remember on them. But that wraps us up for the night. I appreciate you watching. Again, if you want to come on, talk about your collection, or if you know somebody that wants to come on and talk about their collection, or if you just got knowledge and you want to come on and talk about, old stuff or collecting and whatnot, shoot me a message. Let me know. Shoot anybody on the panel a message, and we'll get you on the show. So until next week, thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Bye.
Everybody, thank you.
Hi.